Hello and welcome to today's Storytelling Saturday. I'm Michael Gracia, and today I want to talk about um, storytelling for comic strips. Now, I'm a huge fan of strips. If you watch my Get in Tune videos that I do with my interviews on Tuesday night, I've interviewed some strip artists. You can tell I'm definitely a fan. Even in my background, there used to be a lot of comic strip stuff, but like books and things. But I needed room for other stuff, so I had to move bookshelves around, and those went onto the bookshelves. Um, I'm gonna show some books today. I'm gonna talk about stuff. I'm gonna write stuff down, but I want to give you a little bit of background about comic strips and what I like about comic strips. Now, comic strips used to be one of the biggest pulls in the sense of selling newspapers when they first started out. There was a lot of reasons for it. One was, um, there were people who may have not. This is the one I always use an example that I like. There may have not been a lot of literate people. I don't like to use that term, but there could have been like more on the long lines of people who didn't know how to read well. So having comics like with the pictures and little words was a great way to sell newspapers back in the old days. And story strips, something that would keep people coming back to buy, having these 3-4 panels, whatever it was at the end, and then the next day it continues. So there was this what we call a serialness to it, meaning there's another episode happening, and you got to constantly read to find out what's happening. And there were some really great ones out there. I mean, they still are. Some would even stand up today that that may not be published anymore. Very few story strips are still published. At least in America here, they don't seem to do well. Humor seems to do better. But comics like The Phantom, which was created by Lee Falk, who was about a protector of a jungle. That is huge all over the world. It's still made. Dick Tracy, still made. Those were really great strips. Now, I want to show you a book I've had for, I don't even know how many years. When did it come out? Let me check before I even show it. This book, I'm looking for the copyright date right now, is from 96. So I probably got it's somewhere in the late 90s, early 2000s. 100 Years of American Newspaper Comics. Now, this has humor in there, story strips, and what's great about this is I don't like to consider myself a historian. I like to know that I'm knowledgeable. I'm sure there's people out there. I know there's people out there who know a lot more about these topics than I do, in the sense of when comics came out and who the artists were. I'm sometimes really bad with names and dates. I can show you old my old high school history tests to prove that. But yeah, I love going through books like this and finding something out. I haven't read this entire book from start to finish. I just kind of flip around and open randomly and see what do I like and what do I learn about. Like right now I'm on Don Dixon and the Hidden Empire. So Don Dixon and the Hidden Empire, obviously a story strip, right? There he is. I would have to know more about it. I have to read about it. But I'm not going to read it right now. A couple of reasons. One, I have my glasses on and they're for distance, not for reading. I'd have to take them off. So that's one book. Another book that I like, and who's one of my all-time favorite comic artists, and I actually had a copy of this book years ago, and I sold it because I read it like 3 times. And then one day I'm like, I want to reread this book. So I went out on Amazon and I purchased it again. Although the original cover I had was silver, not gold. But Hal Foster, one of the greatest artists of all time. I know a lot of people, today people look at other artists and modern artists today, but who were they looking at? They were looking at people like this. Here, he's best known for Prince Valiant, which he created. But I want to read a couple of, I'm going to put it a little far away. Hold on, sorry, I clicked the button I didn't need to. All right, so let me take my glasses off so I can read. Give me 1 second here. Now, these are the pull quotes and comments from the back of the book. One day there will be a movie worthy of Hal Foster, the man whose work I had to better myself to see. That's from Neil Adams. Okay. I got into the adventure strips, especially Hal Foster's Prince Valiant and Tarzan. I would cut them out and save them. I loved it. Foster's Tarzan is absolutely beautiful. That's from John Buscema. All right. Harold Foster's work is from another era, one where art and craft were forms of truth. He was a master. Barry Windsor Smith. All right. And then the last one I'll read here. I have been influenced by many people, but my main influence was Hal Foster. That's from Wally Wood. So a lot of top cartoonists that people will still say, these are my influences. And I think, for me, Buscema, definitely an influence. I don't draw like him 100%, but he's one of those I love to look at. And same thing with Wally. I mean, any of these guys I just named, but like Buscema and Wood are two people I go through. So if you want like a good history on the artist and seeing like early works and stuff that he's done, just gorgeous things, right? That's another thing. And then there were tons of story strips, and I got stuff. And speaking of Tarzan, here's one of my Tarzan books. But this is who is it? It's Russ Manning, I think. Russ Manning's work, who is a fantastic artist as well. I love flipping through this. Again, story strips. Next week, I'm going to do humor strips, and we'll talk about that. I wanted to separate them. Another great one here that I'm not happy with the way the way they printed, but I love the strip. Starhawks, one of my all-time favorite artists. Gil Kane worked on it. All right, he was one of the strip people. But what I don't like is the way it was printed. And what I don't like about the printing is they put 4 strips on a page, and it's so small. It's like sometimes you need a magnifying glass to read it. That's my only issue with this book. But art is beautiful, story is great, fantastic, right? And maybe I'll come back and pull out some of these as we go. Another one, you like superheroes? Superman ran as a strip. And it's a lot different than the Superman you know today, but gorgeous art, right? Gorgeous art. I mentioned the Phantom earlier. This is from, what year is this from? 1940 to 1941. This was done by Lee Falk, who was the creator. It's a little more simplistic, but just really good, fun stories. Right. What else do I got? Oops, I did not mean to take that book down. Let me put that over here. Now, when I was a kid, and I was really wanting to get into comics, I mean, I drew my entire life. The story is I've drawn since I can hold a pencil, and I'm sure most artists and cartoonists have that story. So basically, since I can hold a pencil around 2 years old, I've been making marks with it. I got serious. I would say I probably was always serious, but I got serious at 8 years old. That's when I first started creating my own characters, and started telling my own stories. I really wanted to be more of an animator back then, and I got to animate. So I did that, but I was making more flip books and stuff than doing comics. When I was 13 for Christmas, so it's 1989 we're going to, my parents gave me the Bruce Blitz How to Make Comic Strips kit. And I watched the videotape of it. I went through the book. I started making comics. I'm like, oh, crap. It's so much easier to tell my stories through comics than it is through animation. So I started drawing more and more comics. But I always loved the strips. Whenever my father got the newspaper, the comics were the section. Get the Sunday newspaper. I go visit my grandparents, and on specifically on my dad's side, and my uncle would love the comics. He would draw out of the comics. We'd sit and draw and read the comics together. So it was always like a big part of my life. Excuse me. Thought I was going to sneeze for a second. It was always a big part of my life, but it wasn't where I thought I was going to go work-wise. And then when I got this cartooning kit about how to make comic strips, I was like, holy, this is amazing. And I started learning more and more about storytelling and how panels work. And I started looking at the comic strips differently. I wasn't just reading them for fun anymore. I was reading them to learn. And I was looking at how artists did things. And so sometime, I believe it was it's based on this book here. Let me see the copyright date. So it doesn't say the year on here right now. I'd have to go look again. Let's see. I don't know. Anyway, sometime in the late 80s or, 89. So it's probably the same year, or maybe 1990. So I was 13 or 14. I didn't even know about the National Cartoonist Society. People will know it as the NCS. It's a fantastic, group of people. I'm not a member, but I'm friends with a lot of members. And it's one of those things that one day I kind of hope to be, not because I think it's just kind of one of those dreams where I want to kind of be part of the same organization that these people that I learned from. It's just kind of this connection for me for this old school, if you want to call them my cartooning heroes and stuff. It's just, most of them are dead now, but it's something that would be awesome just to say I'm connected with them in the same way. Anyway, my dad wrote or called the NCS up. He found out about them, and they sent me a giant package of things, a lot of stuff. I only have 2 items still from this day. And let me just take a sip of water. And they're 2 of my favorite items. Now, one of the things they got me that I don't have, but I specifically remember, and I don't know if it was just an NCS thing or if it was from King Features Syndicate, because I remember specific characters that King Features syndicated on this, and it was an orange. I don't remember if it was 8.5 by 11 folded or if it was a little larger folded. And it was just all their characters and a little kind of name and a quick little description of them. And I remember Dennis the Menace being on there. I remember Marvin and a few others. And I would trace over these characters so I would learn how to draw them. And I probably drew over it so many times that I tore it apart, going through, I wore it out, which is why I don't have it anymore. But I remember this vividly and trying to find some of these comics that weren't in the newspaper that I had, but I would look when I'd see other comic sections from other papers. I'd visit friends or whatever, and I'd see, what comics are in there, and I would learn more and more. Now, one of the books that came was this. It was called Cartoonist Profiles. This is from June 1989. They had a lot of different information, but in this, what was really interesting to me was Milton Caniff, right here, who worked on Steve Canyon and some other stuff. Brilliant illustrator. Actually, one of my teachers was Richard Rockwell, or most people knew him as Dick Rockwell. He was the inker on the Steve Canyon strip until when Milt Caniff passed away. Dick took the strip and finished it the last year, and then they retired the strip. So I had him as one of my teachers. So I thought that was fantastic. But what is beautiful on here is you can look at these and you see the breakdowns of how, his roughs, his clean pencils, and then his inks at the bottom. And he's got a few pages of this, and I'll go through this, and I'll just look at the beauty that I can see on here. To me, this is gorgeous looking stuff. And there's some other things in here. There's some old Henry strips. This is the first time I actually found out about the strip Henry. It was a pantomime strip about a bald kid, and very, very cute, funny stuff. I really enjoyed that as well. The other book that I got that I really loved and I believe they do this all online now. I don't know, since again I'm not a member, but I believe this is all online. The 1980 edition of the National Cartoonist Society alum. And what was awesome about this book for me is I can literally go through this, and I'm just trying to turn to a page here. It doesn't matter. I think they went alphabetically through here, but you could just... I was looking for someone specific. Where's... okay. You can look and find cartoonists and find a little bit bio about them and maybe a piece of their artwork. So I'm looking at this page specifically right here. Down here, you'll see Tom Gill. Tom Gill was another one of my teachers. Tom was best known for his Western books. He worked on The Lone Ranger. He was one of the most amazing artists at drawing horses. He even told me, I know, he ghost drew the Lone Ranger strip a little bit when they were, needed help out with deadlines or whatever. I mean, he was fantastic. Great teacher. And by the time I had him, he was up there in age, and he couldn't, I don't know what medical condition he had. I forgot what it was. He told me, but he wouldn't be able to look at your art straight on like that. He'd have to hold it up at an angle or something to be able to see it. And that's when he can say, well, your ink line is off here, or this and whatever. And he gave great critiques. Here's another one of my favorites, not a teacher of mine, or official teacher, but Gil Kane. Now, I always look at all these people of teachers of mine, at all these artists that I've seen as teachers, because I'm learning. I might be enjoying their work, but I spend a lot of time studying. I mentioned on one of my streams, I got this book. I haven't read it yet. Oh, I've read about 2 pages of it, to be honest. It's The Hobbit. But the artwork in here is so gorgeous, watercolor, that I'll read like a paragraph, like a little paragraph or a couple of panels, and then I'm like, I got to stop and just check out the artwork. So one day I gotta just really sit down and read. But this is a fantastic book. Now, in addition to all this stuff, growing up and loving these comics and learning more about it, my focus, and today is called Storytelling Saturday, my focus has always been on storytelling. As I got older, it wasn't that it was just comics I wanted to do or animation. I just wanted to tell stories. And I learned as much as I could about storytelling. And not just comics, but what I would call visual storytelling as a whole. I've worked, and I've mentioned this, I've worked in puppetry. I've worked in video production, mostly through editing, but I've done some on-set work. And editing, man, you want to learn to tell a story. I mean, editing is putting it all together. So I've done a lot of different things. Everything I've done is storytelling based in my life. So even though I might be called a cartoonist or an animator or designer, whatever it is, my job is to tell stories. And I love it so much that I even came up, and this is down from the App Store right now and down from the iOS App Store as well as the Android. But I want to show you, I created an app. It's coming up on the screen here. I don't know if you can see it. There it goes. Get in Tune, a simple guide to storytelling. Okay? And, because I created it, I can still have it on my phone. The reason it's down is because there were updates to the iOS store and to the Android that my app needs to be updated with. However, the designers that I worked with both have new jobs, and they kind of have a non-compete clause in there, so they can't work on private projects. So I'm looking for new designers that can help me update this at a reasonable price. But what it would be is, again, it's going to get dark here. Whoops. Close out my phone real quick. So, geez, today is not a day. Okay, let's see. Can it get focus again? Let's see. So here I got storytelling notes. And in there's this one's specifically on the story strip, which is what I'm going to talk about today. There's another one on a section on humor strips. And then there's a game you could play where, let it just focus in, sorry, where you have different things: genre, gender of the character, age of the character, the type of character, occupation, location, props. And what you do is, which side is my finger on here? So I can build story, right? So I'll let it focus in. So now it's an adventure story that stars a female toddler that's an alligator that works as a hairstylist. They're in a deli, and there's a bucket in the story. Now you can turn any of these on and off, but it's just to help a random generating storytelling. And then there's timed rounds and things that you would do. And it's a great thing, and it's great for education, not just for people who want to learn to make comics, but it's great for people who want to just learn to tell stories in their English class. I've had school teachers buy this, and before all these updates happened to the iOS store and the Android store, I was in talks with with a school district. Hold on for making this part. I got to put my glasses back on. Sorry. All right, sorry about that, guys. Everything was blurry to me. The screen is at least 2 feet away from me, so after 3 feet, I'm basically blind without my glasses. Excuse me. So let's really talk about storytelling. What is comic storytelling? Why am I talking about comic strip storytelling today when a lot of people maybe not read them? I mean, I think they should still be read. I think they're amazing, but not a lot of people buy newspapers. Not a lot of people think they're still around. The truth is, the story, comic storytelling for strips is just like telling stories for comic books, but it's just done in a smaller fashion. So let me share my screen here. And I want to share right here. Allow. All right. So I'm working in a program called Clip Studio Paint right now. I'm just going to give myself the whole screen. There we go. And where is my stylus? There it is. Okay. So right now I got my pencil on, and you can see it draws. Okay, working good. Just making sure. Always want to do a test. So, and this is part of my app, and how it breaks it down into a 3 or 4 panel setup. All right. So we'll do 3 panels on top, and then we'll do 4 panels on the bottom here. All right. Whoops. Sorry, I'm just checking something that I needed to check. Okay. All right, 1. So I got 3 and 4 panels. So this obviously is the 3. This is the 4. Now, if you watched my episode last week, you're going to... This is going to be very similar to what I did. Actually, it's probably going to be the same exact thing, but I'm going to talk a little differently about this than how I talked about it last week. So in the first panel in the 3, we introduce. Okay, this is also kind of your setup as well. So you're setting up. What you're doing is you're introducing the scene and setting up the problem. Okay, this one right here is the climax. And this one here is the resolution. Okay? Or cliffhanger. Now, if you're doing a daily strip, you want to have a cliffhanger on here. So people will come back. All right? If you're doing the 4 panel, it's intro, it's setup, it's climax, and then it's either the resolution or cliffhanger. All right. Now, one of the things that I was taught, and this was actually taught to me by Dick Rockwell when I was writing comics. I studied with him late 90s, early 2000s, maybe 99, maybe 2000. Because the school I studied with him at, I went to a school called Empire State College. It's in New York, and it's all over New York. It's an independent study school. So what that means was there were no grades. I worked. It was almost like doing remote learning, like what a lot of people are doing today. So I would meet with what they called a mentor rather than a teacher. And the mentor would give me an assignment. Some of them I never met. I talked to them through phone, email, even fax back then, and I would give assignments. And if I took a class that was worth 4 credits, at the end of the semester, when I was getting graded, it was up to my mentor to say, did I earn all 4 credits or not? So that made me work really, really hard, because there was one class, and I'm not going to lie, I got sick and I spent a week in a hospital and it threw me off. I only got 3 out of 4 credits. So I had to pay for that credit somewhere else. And it makes you lose money. So I actually like that system over the traditional grading system, because I think it makes you really learn and really work hard. And the reason I went to that over a regular school to get my bachelor's, I was already working in the industry. Like I said, I started working in '94 when I was 18 professionally. And I got it took me 3 years, well, 2.5, to get my associates with work. And then it took me from then to 2001 to get my bachelor's. And then in 2000, I graduated. Was it 2005 I started? No, I think it was 2003 I started my master's and graduated in 2005. But all this stuff was really a great learning experience, because I got to kind of design my classes. Sure, there were required classes I had to take, but I believe, to be honest with you, I didn't take any minors at Empire State College, but I believe I might have maybe 6 credits shy. I could have had a minor in like creative writing. I did a lot of writing classes and a lot of like classical literature and things like that I enjoyed, but mostly obviously art. And I got to study animation. What they would do is they would find professionals in the field. So when I said I wanted to study cartooning, they looked for someone who was kind of local, and that's where Dick Rockwell was. And I lived in a town called Mahopac, New York. He lived a town a half hour away, straight up our main street, which was called Route 6. That went through a bunch of different towns. He was like, "Do you know where this location is?" And I said, "Yes." He goes, "Just make a right at that spot." And I'm not going to name where he lived, the town or anything, because I don't know if his family's still there. But make a right at that location, and I'm the house at the top of the hill. So he worked professionally. He also taught at a college called FIT, which is in the city, the Fashion Institute. So like either on a Saturday or a weeknight, I would drive from my house. It'd take me 30 minutes from door to door. We go down into like his family room down in the basement, which his studio was off the side. We'd sit on the couch and we would look at my work and we would discuss it, and we would do some projects and things. And he taught me a lot of great stuff. But one of the things that he always taught me, whether I was writing a comic strip or a comic book, and I'm sure I knew this like just in my head, but never heard it out loud, was when you write, the last panel on the page should always make you want to either turn the page if you're reading a comic book, or it should make you want to buy the newspaper again if you're doing a comic strip. So it was always, so even though you have a lot of it was cliffhanger because we were doing stories at the time. And that was a very important lesson for me because it changed the way I wrote. Like I said, I read comics for years. I probably knew this just in my head, but to hear it made me really think, am I doing that? And I started going back and looking at the work I was writing, and I noticed sometimes it wasn't there. So it kind of pushed me and challenged me to write. And the way I wrote, and it changed the way I wrote. All right. Now, also, by the way, there is a setup for a Sunday strip. Just so you guys know, the Sunday strip, whoops, and I'm just going to draw quick like this, is usually broken up into what we call 2 columns or not columns, tiers. So is it TE or TI? I'm a terrible speller. So you have tier 1 and tier 2. Usually you have some kind of introduction panel on there, like the title panel. A lot of Sunday strips would do that. And then you might have, and by the way, this could also be broken into 3 tiers, just so you know. And then up here, we'd have what some people might call the throwaway panels, because you didn't need them for the story. to have them for the story wasn't officially needed, but just was a little extra to kind of help. And then you would break this up usually in somewhere 6, 8, 9 panels, depending who the artist was, and you would tell the story that way. So you'd have these 3 tiers. Some people would do 2. And I don't remember the actual title for this. I just call them throwaway panels, by the way. And then you introduce what's going on here. You kind of go to your setup here. You might actually extend it out. You might have more than one climax, and then not more than one, but more than one panel to help tell the story. So you had more room. And then here's the resolution. Usually, and it opened up a story with a cliff. And the reason I'm writing both here is because when I read a lot of story strips, the Sunday strip, like the way there was a kind of a pattern, as they went on. And what would happen is there would be basically like a story a week. There's one overall giant story, and then there's a small story, and the stories would be weekly in a sense. And that Sunday resolved what happened throughout Monday through Saturday. And then, but it left something open for Monday again. So that's where the cliffhanger. So it got resolved and had a cliffhanger. Now there were some strips, and I don't remember which ones off the top of my head. Their Sundays were totally different. They were separate from what the story was. So and not everyone worked in the same format. I'm telling you, like with this weekly thing, but it was a kind of a regular way of doing it. So you kept people involved, and they would get their stories built up. Now, in today's world, when you're working on comics, again, not a lot of people get syndicated. I mean, even years ago, it was like 1 million to 1 shot. Now I think it's even less than that. So, when you're looking at that nowadays, people are looking at a lot of comics on their phones, on the computers, and one of the biggest websites out there is Webtoon. Now, Webtoons used to, when it first started, you could post your comic like a standard comic. It could look like a comic book page, right? And have whatever you want going on, and there's your comic book page, right? And that was fine. Then they changed their format. And now things scroll down. So you could put up a comic. And by the way, there could be movement in these now. There's ways of doing that. But you can put up a comic, still the old school fashion of 4 panels, or 3, whatever it is, and just make it and just cut it up to scroll down. The thing with something like Instagram. So this is great here for Webtoons. And Instagram lets you scroll this way. You can put up to 10 images in Instagram. So, and just so you know, their boxes, I don't even know why I'm drawing another box. I can just write it here, is 1080 pixels by 1080 pixels. So it's a perfect square, right? And you can have 10 going like that. Now, if you don't want to, if you're not looking to ever print these up, if you're not looking to go like really fancy with it, you can draw at that size and just constantly, like in Photoshop or Clip Studio or whatever, constantly create new layers and turn layers on and off and just save the documents, each layer individually as a JPEG or something. And then just load them all up together in order. Or you can draw at your own size and cut them, which is what I tend to do. When I draw my comic The Wiz, which has been off for a while, and I bring it back, and I'm going to bring it back, and it's a humor strip. So, and just so if you have never seen The Wiz before, here he is. All right, and actually 2 right there. It's been a while since I've drawn them. Actually, that's not 100% true. I drew them the other day. I'm getting ready to start drawing them after I finish a project, so I'm just getting back into. And here he is with his. And there he is, and that's my character, the Wiz. Now, I looked at different sizes, and this is one of the things. I was posting it only on Facebook and Instagram when it first came out. And if you give me a second, I could... Let me open up a Facebook page. So I'm going to remove this. I'm going to stop sharing right now. I'm back. Hello. And I'm going to go to a Facebook page. Let me just get to a screen that I can get my internet on. And I hit the wrong button. What is it? Facebook.com/ and it didn't pop up. That's interesting. Let me go through regular. I thought I knew the link. Let's go to pages. I sometimes get confused on this new setup, you know. So let me share my Facebook page. And those watching, if you don't like this page, feel free to... I mean, not that you don't like... If you don't like it on Facebook, please go and like it, because probably by May, I'm going to start posting again on here. All right. So here's the Wiz comic. And what's interesting is by the end, I started trying it as single panel jokes. So my last post was June 17th, 2019. The reason I stopped is shortly before that, excuse me, back in May, I spent a week in the hospital with pneumonia, and I was doing so much work, and I think I just got run down, and that's how I got pneumonia. But I just needed a break from things, so I stopped the strip. And I've been wanting to bring them back, and and for those who create, you'll get this reference. I felt the Wiz and I weren't talking, you know, and you know, and the way I mean by that is when you're drawing a character a lot, you feel like if you just say, "Hey, I'm going to put the Wiz in the Wiz is in a bowling alley," the Wiz will tell me what's going on. I can, you know, in the bowling alley, he meets a frog, let's say. So when he's talking to the frog, how will the Wiz react? So I wasn't having that connection. And then in 2020, when the pandemic happened, I started doing my Get in Tune interviews. I started talking with a lot of creatives, a lot of people who do comic strips and stuff, and it started inspiring me again. And I started talking with the Wiz again. And instead of posting it twice a week like I was, I'm only going to post it once a week, but I have almost 52 strips written. And it doesn't mean I won't change what I draw or maybe add an extra post if I feel like it, but I have enough strips basically to take me through the year. So this coming month in February, because I'm working on a couple of freelance projects right now, I'll be done by the end of the month. If I don't have a freelance project, my month is going to be spent drawing all the Wiz comics that I have written out, that are ready, that I think are funny enough to go, which is in the 40s of them. And then this way I'll start posting hopefully in March. If I can get it all done in February, I'll just start posting again in March. Otherwise, I'm looking at April and May, but depending on freelance schedules. So I love single panel gags. They're my favorite thing to write. And next week, when I do Storytelling Saturday, I'm going to talk specifically about humor strips. So if you're into humor, it's definitely the day to check on here. And what I love about single panel gags is it allows me, it's a challenge. It allows me the opportunity to, how do I challenge myself? How do I tell the story in one picture? You know? So next week we'll look at this as well, but I'll go more into it. So these are just, single panels. And I think this might be the last of the single panels. So yeah, no, when we look at some of these strips here, I'm trying to find one that I really, really enjoy. This one might be I think maybe the best one I've ever written, and we'll talk about it. So, in case you can't read it, in panel 1 it says, "Great Guru, I have traveled very long and far to find the answer to a conundrum that has plagued the minds of the greatest thinkers for decades." And then the Guru says, "There is no question that cannot be answered when we look inside and reflect deeply on it. What is your question?" And then Ajax, who's the Wiz's Raven, says, "Is grease the word or is bird the word?" And then the Guru's mind explodes. Which, I'll be honest, I could have left that as a 3-panel. It worked out well, but I wanted that extra reaction. I love that he's blowing his top and it's kind of blowing away. Now, I know this isn't a story strip, but the reason I was bringing this up is because we were talking about Instagram. And the size I draw at is what is it? The page is I think 6 by 20, and then I draw at 5.5 by 19, which I remember reading. I believe is one of the sizes Charles Schulz drew by the end of his career. He started when he got smaller, however long that was. The reason I changed to that, as opposed to when I was working with, if you read it, it'll be like, oh, you work at like 4.5 by 13 or whatever it is, and I just felt the drawings weren't coming up correctly on Instagram when I cut them up. So I started researching what other artists drew at. And normally I don't care, as long as it's proportionate. But Peanuts is probably my all-time favorite strip. And, or at least in the top 5, it kind of switches spots every now and then. And I'm like, what did Charles Schulz draw? Because, he is like the master of all cartooning. And so I looked up, I found that, and then when I cut it, and I did a test thing. All I did was I didn't even draw a strip. I just went into Photoshop and I drew out the size and I cut up panels based on how I cut them up for a 3 and 4 panel strip. And then I quickly uploaded it to Instagram with how I'd cut it up, and I just put it up and I swiped and I saw all my panels nicely. And then I deleted the post because there was nothing there. But it was just a quick test for me, and I thought it worked out well. So that's why I chose to go to that. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to my website, and I want to show you guys something here. michaelgracia.com. So Oodles of Doodles, this is a book coming out very soon. It's my children's book. But we're going to go to my comics page, and you can see I have some of my whiz up. These are some other single panels I'll talk about next week. This is a multi-panel humor strip, which I just love. So he says, hello over there. And then the guy is saying, hi, I want to swim over for dinner. And he's got all these little skulls, and he's got these crazy looking teeth and stuff. So I always thought that was very, very funny. And this was just a test in playing with the software. I forget which one it was, but I was just doing a test with that, and I just liked it, so I put it up. But here's a story strip that I did. This is my character. This is for my character, Plunger Pup, which was another strip I did a while back, and just scheduling-wise made me end it. I'm going to go back and bring it back as a comic book, I believe. I'm going to write it. I'm going to rewrite the comic, like update it, so that I can start drawing by the end of this year and have it sometime in 2022. But let's talk about this. There's some humor in here, not this panel specifically, but in the this is a story strip for the most part. So basically, when I created, I'll tell you the story of Plunger Pup real quick. I created a story that I was parodying. I created this character in high school. So we're going back to like sometime in the early 90s. I graduated in 94, but I believe I was in 9th grade. So we're looking at like 91 time, right? Was that the year? Or was it 89 to 9? Whatever it was. Let's just say 1990. I was a big fan of the Disney Afternoon, which if you guys are in my age group, I'll be 45 next month. So gives you an idea. And they had the Darkwing Duck cartoon on, which I loved as a kid. And I I remember watching, and there was a character on there named Megavolt who was a rat, and he had he had powers of electricity, and he had a plug on top of his head. And one day I was homesick, and I said, if you take the prongs of the plug out and put a stick in there, it'll look like a plunger. And being sick, I didn't realize he was a rat at the time, so I drew a dog with a plunger, and it looked very similar to Megavolt. And I changed it down, made him a little cutesy and whatnot, and he went through a few changes. But I liked the idea of parody. I always parodied. I liked, like, if I liked Superman, I had a character Hero Man, which is just a generic superhero, and whatever. Instead of the Incredible Hulk, and I know it probably won't fly today because of political correctness, but I had a character called Stupid Man. Now, here's a guy who was a scientist, and when he had to use his powers, he basically turned into a low-level, until he was an idiot. He wore a dunce cap. He was, he had buck teeth. He liked the traditional goofy superhero looking or goofy character. And I love that character. I actually I did little short stories of Hero Man and Stupid Man together. So Hero Man was a reporter, just like Superman was, but he was an anchor man for a news program, and Stupid Man was just his friend. But Stupid Man, the reason why his name was Stupid was his real name was Stuart Pidd. So people called him Stu. So Stupid. And he was my Hulk. Even though he didn't turn into a big raging beast, he was this really powerful character, but low intelligence, very much like the Hulk. So I did a lot of parody stuff. And which actually is great right now, because I don't know if you guys have, if I've mentioned this on here. I know on my Get in Tune streams I have, but I'm working with Parody Press at the moment, who put stuff out in the 80s and 90s, and they're back now, and they have a Indiegogo up. So if you guys are interested in donating, I'll go back to the Facebook and show you a picture. I'll just load it up here. But what was I going to say? But yeah, no, and I'm doing parody work with them. Just check it out on Indiegogo. It's X Farce Reloaded. It's all X-Men parodies, and I did a piece for them. And anyway, sorry, I just had a little brain fart. I forgot where I was for a second. So yeah, Plunger Pup came about from that, and I created this giant cast of characters. Some I had from years ago, some, just kind of, I'm building this Plunger verse, if you will, and I had all these characters. So instead of Spider-Man, I had the spooftacular Spider Duck. Instead of Batman and Robin, I had Mop Man and Water Bucket Boy. And Mop Man was a janitor, and Water Bucket Boy was a kid who went to the school where he was a janitor at. And, they wore, I made it that Water Bucket Boy was kind of the brains of the operation, and he just had this giant water bucket he carried with him. And Mop Man had his mop was like a Swiss Army knife, so it was a giant mop, but he can pull gadgets basically out of it. And not that he was an idiot character like Stupid Man was, where he had no intelligence. So he was just kind of a little more goofy, and you had think like Hong Kong Phooey. Hong Kong Phooey was just kind of clueless. And his cat Spot was the one that basically helped him out. So that's kind of how Mop Man and Water Bucket Boy was. And I remember Mop Man wore striped boxers on the outside of his outfit, and Stupid Man wore heart underwear on the outside, was being held up by suspenders. So anyway, I did all this parody stuff, and I eventually created this story. And from 97 to somewhere like 99, I did 4 comics, 3 with Plunger Pup, and then I was spinning him into another story called The Ridiculous Heroes, which featured the other comics. And due to finances and self-publishing, I had to stop after that book. I just couldn't afford it. In print, because back in those days, when you'd print a book, they would want you to order a minimum of 1,000 copies. And, you're small press, you're not doing a lot of, sales. You didn't have the internet to sell like you do now. You basically were having kindling for your fireplace. It was just, you weren't pushing. If you sell 1 box of books, and they're putting 100 books in one box, and you have to buy 1,000. You got 10 boxes, you got 9 boxes left over, and you got all these books. I mean, there were a lot I just got rid of. Some I gave away, some I eventually just dumped. But I kept a few for myself. But it was a different time. These days, I think if I started this, I would attack it completely differently. And so when I got to working on Plunger Pup, I did him as a comic, and I've always loved the idea. I love science fiction. I'm a big sci-fi fantasy. Oh, Joe Ryan is watching. Thanks, Joe. Yes, Stupid Man was a lot of fun. I don't know if I have any of the actual strips still around. I did like maybe 5 or 6. They were like one shot, maybe 1 or 2 pages. Just I was working on them in high school, so it was like using not notebook paper, but computer, photocopy paper and stuff. So I never did them on like really good clean stuff. I might have them saved somewhere, but yeah, it was a fun story, fun character to do. And unfortunately, due to political correctness, he may not be a character I can pull out anymore. But I would love to bring him back with some of my parody stuff. But one of the reasons I actually worked with Plunger Pup a lot and kept going back to him was not just because of my love of the story or the character. It was because he was a science fiction character. And if you watch things like Doctor Who and Star Trek and all these things, you can land on a planet that is not as advanced as the person flying or is more advanced. So I could do stories that had characters landing on I'd be like, oh, you know what? I want to do a story about Conan. So now they have now Plunger Pup's in a primitive world, and he's got to rescue a princess or whatever, or help this Conan-like character. Or I could be like, I want to do a Star Wars story. And so anyway, I combined Green Lantern, who is one of my all-time favorite superheroes, and Luke Skywalker to create the story of Plunger Pup. And so basically he has this magic plunger. And Joe, I saw you'd love to see him. I'll do a drawing at him in Clip Studio before I end the stream. Okay, so make sure to hang out. So when I was doing Plunger Pup, I said I want to give him the powers of Green Lantern. I read Green Lantern like crazy. Kyle Rayner at the time was my all-time favorite Green Lantern when I was really developing him. Although I'm a big Alan Scott fan, the original. I love Hal Jordan. But Kyle Rayner was just new, and I love this concept of somebody I believe it was Gant that just kind of threw him a ring and said, here you go, you're the new Green Lantern, and then disappears. And he's like, oh crap, what's my life? And he was an artist, so things got creative, and I was an artist, so I loved all that aspect of him. And I'm like, okay, so he's got a plunger that can basically do anything that he can will it to do, although I don't use the same thing. Basically, he shoots out toilet paper out of it to wrap bad guys up in, and he blasts some stuff and he flies with it and things like that. And I said, I love Star Wars, although if you guys remember from my background, I have a big Lord of the Rings print. That I'm much more of a Lord of the Rings fan over a Star Wars fan, but I do love Star Wars. So I said, let me play around with this. So when I started bringing this back, it was the time. I believe it was around the time of the first Avengers, because I kind of stole a joke from them. So what's happening here? And I'm using the newspaper strip so I can tell, use more to the story. So basically, there's a cargo ship flying in a sector of space that few dare, And here's a spaceship, and it says, the cargo ship approaches, sir. He says, send it through. And then it says, I'm opening cargo bay 3, kind of building it up. And you have that on the screen. And then if you remember in the Avengers, the guy was playing Galaga. I had him playing Space Invaders because these guys are the bad guys, and they are going to be Space Invaders at some point. So it was just kind of a little hint, a little foreshadowing, but kind of a reference to the Avengers. And then prepare for docking. And then here is Plunger Pup's Darth Vader, if you will, and not his father. I'm going to tell you that up front. I'm not stealing Star Wars. I'm just going to tell you he is a Darth Vader type of character named Dark Plunger. And there's the guy down below. And I came up with this concept of having the computers below the throne room the villain, because when I was a kid, I don't remember. I was in G.I. Joe, but I don't remember if it was in the show or if it was in G.I. Joe the movie. Cobra Commander Serpentor stood above everybody, but below them were all these were the tech guys and doing stuff. So I'm like, I always liked that concept of, when you're supposed to be this ultra powerful king type of character, you want people always below you. So you can tell he's sitting on some kind of throne or something that's high up, and everybody else is below him. All right. Then we come here. The cargo ship lands, and we have all these robots. Pilot, please remain in the ship until it can be inspected. And then he's like, inspect the ship XL9. And then, yes, Boss Robot 6, whatever, just, dumb usual names. And the robot's going through, everything appears to be in order. Wait, sensor's picking up an organic life form because everything was supposed to be man-made. And then he's malfunctioning, and you see a plunger shooting him. And then the boss bot comes in, sees what's happening. Boom, he gets thrown out. And he goes, and here's a cloaked guy. He goes by the name the Phantom Plumber. He says, I hope the rest of my mission is that simple. And then he says, the only way out is through that door, but first, and then here's some prepare to be deleted. And he says, robots are always good for a laugh. So he destroys them with some of his powers. And there is a thing like the Force in here. I call it the flush. So here's Phantom Plumber flying, and then a little reference to Mork and Mindy says Shazbot, and he says, okay, you got me. He's not going to hurt all these characters, and you'll find out in later story-wise. And he goes, I have the plunger. And then here it's cuff him and take him to Dark Plunger. Just little stuff, and he's flying, and then says, we have the Phantom Plumber for you, sir. Bring him forward. Kneel before the master. He's getting zapped, basically getting tased there. Says, you've come for your friend. He goes, yes, I seek Plunger Pup. Says, why do you hold on to this belief he's still alive? I killed him myself 18 years ago. Take him away and let Darwin have his fun. Now, Darwin's a great character. He's like an owl who's a wizard and just loves to, he's very evil. But in the story, now I'm just going to tell you this real quick because I'm not ruining anything by telling you this. The Plunger Pup that I created is technically the second Plunger Pup in the story. He's the son of the original Plunger Pup who is friends with the Phantom Plumber. And the reason I say 18 years is because when Plunger Pup died, he had a child. He had a child who was very young that he had to leave to go fight in this war that he died in. And so 18 years later shows that time passes and the kid is now basically an adult but still a kid. So sorry. So talking about this here, having the idea, and I know I've been talking about storytelling and I showed you how I'm setting stuff up, so you can see how the way I'm writing these, I'm trying to leave that last panel open. So you want to know, like, it says take him away. Like, you don't even see Dark Plunger. You see him in the shadows. Take him away and let Darwin have his fun with him. Now you're curious. Who is Darwin, right? What is he going to do him? So obviously being a bad guy is probably going to torture him or some sort, right? We don't know, or I do, but you guys don't yet. But if we go back here, setup. I introduced, he's flying to the door. He just got the setup opening. Climax, Shazbot, And how's it resolved? Excuse me. It says, okay, you got me, whatever, blah, blah, blah. And he goes, take his plunger. So you want to know what's going to happen next. What are they going to do with him? I'll go back and maybe another one here. So you know that when you leave off on this one here, robots are always good for a laugh. He still has a mission because he says it here. I hope that the rest of this mission is that simple. And as he gets to this last panel, you can see he's defeating the robots. What's happening next? So there is a bit of these cliffhangers that I'm making sure I'm writing. And it's a very, it's a very strategically thought out way of writing. Thanks, Joe. So this is some stuff that I've done. I'm going to bring them back. I'm thinking in comic book form. I do love the strip format. Let me remove this here. Sorry, a bunch of different monitors I'm on here. And let me remove. I'm going to stop my share. All right. So, like, where is it here? I mean, it doesn't matter. I can pull out another one. Did I even show it? I guess maybe I didn't show it. I have, I thought I took it out. I'm sorry. It's not a big deal. I had a Donald Duck comic strip book. It was a collection of Donald Duck comics. And when they were strip books. And oh, Joe, thanks. Listening to this is helping you tremendously. I'm happy I can help. That's what this is all here for. Excuse me. So when when I look at that, that's kind of, I like that strip format. I like that here's 6, here's 9 panels, whatever it is. Like I'm going to be starting something in March. The script is almost being finalized. I should have a copy this weekend from my writer. And I've mentioned it's called, sorry, I hope there was no static there. It's called The Adventures of Dax Photon, or I might just shorten it to Dax Photon. It's a sci-fi adventure story. He's kind of your generic, I don't want to say generic, but he's kind of like that typical, I'm great, strong superhero type of thing. He's a sci-fi guy, kind of, and there's a lot of like Flash Gordon influence in there. It's not really a parody, but it's more of a paying homage to everything I love about sci-fi. And my friend who's writing it for me, when I approached him about it, and we've been talking on and off for years, and finally it was like, we got to just sit down and do it. And the reason he's writing it, number one, is I don't want to write it. I just want to draw it. But I plotted the story. I said, this is the story. This is what has to happen in the story. I want you to write that, but write it the way you want to tell it. And basically, I go through it each week, or every time he sends me something, and I send him notes. Now, very rare have I made any changes because I like what he's doing with it. But he may say, "Oh, you didn't give me a name for this type of character, so I just called him this." And if the name's cool with me, I say that's fine. And he goes, "I didn't know how to work this out because we didn't get a chance to talk about it." I like it. Oh, but you know what? I think if we just make this little change, it'll be better. And we sit and discuss it. And that's the way I always work with my writers. I may be a writer, but I'm more of an illustrator. I draw my stories. I write with drawings for the most part. And when I'm doing that, I want someone who can make my words better. Not that I think I write bad, but I sometimes think I'm not going to write the story as well as it can be done. So I reached out to a friend of mine who's a writer, and he's doing an amazing job with this. That's all I can say is I can't wait to share it, is how amazing it is. And anyway, I'm deciding right now through publishing, it's going to definitely be up as a webcomic for the first year. It's going to be, it's written as a 52-page comic, and I plan to collect it at the end of the year as a book, and probably run like a crowdfunding to get the book printed. But I'm going to add stuff to it. So there are things in the story that we wanted to, that I'm like, I want to limit to 52 pages, so it just runs for an entire year. Okay, that's number one. But there are other stories that we were talking about, and like, oh, this character seems really cool, and we get really into it. I'm like, but if we focus on that character, the whole story changes. So I said, why don't we get together and create short stories of other characters or pieces that we'd love to explore more that aren't necessarily important to the story, but are just fun pieces. I said, let's get together and write maybe another 4 or 5 short stories between 4 to 8 pages a piece. And I'll throw those into the book for the sale, because they're not needed officially for the story, but they're just, I think, fun adventures. So that's going to be basically my my 2020. Well, I'm hoping to release it in 2021, and by the end of 2022, the goal is September 2020. Hold on, excuse me. I'm sorry about that. The goal is in September of 2021 to release the strip on something like Webtoon. Then, at the end of 2022, run the crowdfunding, whether I go through Indiegogo, Kickstarter, whatever it is, put that together, and have it out. Hopefully, I don't know, maybe March, April in 2022. Wait, no, come 2021, 2022, 2023. Sorry, that's that's the plan. Anyway, so I'm deciding: do I want it to look like a strip, or do I want it to look like a comic book format? Now, do I draw it in a traditional comic book format and cut it up so it gets posted on something like Webtoon and can run properly, or cut it up so it works well on Instagram, and then just keep it regular for print? Do I print it at a different size than standard comic book? Like, these are all things that are going through my head with Dax, and I'm talking with my writer to find out his input, and based on how he's writing it, how do we envision it? Now, I'm not going to lie, we're writing it as a comic book. Some pages have 6 panels, some have 8, some have 3. But that doesn't mean, but they're not all, but number one, they're not all equal. So they're not like traditional, I can tell 4 panels. So is the comic book format the proper way it should be released in general, even online? So I need to figure things out like that. It doesn't matter how I start drawing it. It just matters the size I'm drawing it. That's really what I'm thinking about. So I'm going to be talking with my writer after he sends me. It should be sending me the last like 15 pages this weekend, and I should know some more this week, and we'll talk about it. But anyway, those are the things I'm thinking about. But understanding the storytelling stuff that I'm telling you, understanding, introduce, set up, climax, resolve, / cliffhanger. That's really the important stuff to know. Keep it simple. Last week I called it simple storytelling, which comic strips really are, but we can get in depth. We get lost in world building. We get lost in all these character designs and backstories. Those things are important to have, but if you spend too much time on that, you're not going to be able to ever draw your strip. So if you have a character like Dick Tracy, let's say Dick Tracy. I love Dick Tracy. What is he? He's a detective. So all of a sudden, just make him. What is he? He's kind of like what, a tough as nails kind of detective. He's that stereotypical when he was created. He was all good, all by the book, all that stuff, right? So if you look at somebody like Dick Tracy, now you got his name. He's a by the book detective, and he's kind of like a tough guy, right? All of a sudden, you could start writing and say, well, he's a cop in modern day, New York City, whatever the city is, I forget, right? So what does he do? Now all of a sudden, you can set up, your location. You're in New York City. What part? That's up to you. You create that location. He's a detective, so now you need a crime. So now you got your setup. What kind of crime is it? Is it a bank robbery? Is it a kidnapping? Whatever it is. All right. Dick Tracy gets the call. He goes and does his detective work. He captures the crook. Now, right there in 4 panels, or in at least 4 short concepts, I have the story of Dick Tracy without adding extra characters, without adding a backstory to him. All that can kind of come later. I can start telling my story of Dick Tracy just by knowing that. And one of the things, and I'm just looking for a sheet of paper right now. I'm sorry. Usually I keep a lot, but I have nothing blank on me at the moment. Oh, you know what? Here's a dirty sheet of paper from drawing on. So basically what I've done and what I do with this, and I do this on writing, I'll do this bullet points on my computer sometimes, or on my phone. But when I'm creating a story, I take a sheet of paper and I fold it in 4s. Or like I said, I bullet point it. So when I open it up, and I showed this last week, I now have 4 sections here. Where's a pen? Give me 1 second. And then I label it. This pen does right? Yeah, 1, 2, 3, 4. Right? So now I got I got it labeled. You can see 1, 2, 3, and 4. All right. What I do is I take notes. I know I'm going to introduce. I'm going to set up. This one's 3. I'm going to write the climax, and I'm going to write the resolution. Right. So this is how I write a lot of my major comic stories. I say, this is it. Okay. This is and I'll make paragraph, bullet points, whatever. And if it's for one comic, I might write dialogue. If this is my overview for everything, then I'll take sections of this and do new bullet points and break it down. This is scene 1 or comic 1 and whatever. How many pages will it take? How many panels? Whatever it is. So I'll set up and start like this. And then I break away into really detailing it out. So that's the important thing there. And that will help you guys really come up with your stories, really figure it out. Don't, you could say, I'm like, okay, I love fantasy. I love science fiction. I said that. Let's say I'm doing a fantasy story. This is a character. This is a story about magic, or there's magic in the world. There are different types of wizards, or we'll call them magic users, because not everybody likes the term wizards. So there are low-level magic users that can only cast spells through potions and reading, right? Then there's another group of magic users that could do it through, if you want to call it props, they need a magic wand, okay? Then you got another level that are what we would call gesture, so they can wave their hand and magic happens. And then maybe they can blink their eyes or whatever it is. Samantha from Bewitched twitched her nose. That could be, a gesture. And then you have the top that could do it through mental, could do it through thought. And that's how my magic world works. And that's all I'm going to say. And it's a fantasy world. Think of it like, and I can make a note, think of it like Lord of the Rings. So now all of a sudden I know there's orcs in there, and we could have halflings and whatever it is, right? But this is how my magic works in the world. I know that now. My character is I don't know, a wizard or a young magic user learning about magic. So we now know he's got to go through all this process. And if he's only a potion and spellcaster through reading, how does he fight someone that does wand magic, who can, he has to throw a thing, but this guy could just wave his wand and boom, this, whatever. So that's as much as the world building I did, or I'll do for it. And then as I go, more character. Oh, I like this character. Let me give him a backstory if he's more than a one shot. That's how I handle it. I happen to, and just because it's me, when I draw a character, even if he is in there for one moment, I'll write a short backstory in my head. I may not put it on paper, but I like to know why the guy is in the place. Like, there's a superhero battle, and or let's just go. We'll go back to Dick Tracy. There's a guy robbing a grocery store. Dick Tracy's out there, and there's just like I don't know, a little kid running. Okay, so now we just add drama. There's a kid running. Could the robber try to get the kid, whatever? But why is that kid there? And I'll be like, no, he's just, I don't know, chasing after something. His dog escaped or whatever. He's looking for his dog. So now all of a sudden I got this thing in my head. So now I've created this character, this reason for him to be there, and it helps me with the expressions and stuff. And not everyone needs to do that. It's just something I do. It's sometimes a waste of time, but occasionally it helps. So, but we're at the 113 mark here on here. I usually like to do this only for an hour. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to share my screen again, because I promised Joe I would draw Stupid Man. And I actually really enjoy drawing him. So let's go right here. Allow, and you still see the whiz, and my stylus is here. Let's turn this off and get a new layer up. I'm just going to zoom in a little bit more. So let's put him down here. So he was and it's been a while since I've drawn him, so if I don't remember everything, kind of had this big nose. I remember that. And he was kind of cross-eyed. you know, and when I was drawing this and when I created these characters, you know, and when we're and as cartoonists and that um, we draw through stereotypes. You know, if you need a bank robber, they're going to look a certain way, whatever. You know, I remember reading or seeing a video, I think it was with Sergio Aragonés, and he said that until the stereotypes change, we got to draw this way because it's recognizable. So drawing a Goofy character, we go back when you look at Goofy from Disney, or you look at any of those type of Goofy characters. What do? They had big ears. They had, you know, this kind of buck teeth and all these things. They were just and so that's what I based him on. Then he had some hair that came out up here. I remember that. And it said, and there's something about the way I drew my characters. All of them had this little thing around their neck. Let's get his cape over here. I don't remember his symbol. I don't know if it was. I think it was started off as just SM for Stupid Man, but I think I eventually changed it to be what's it called? The dunce cap. So I think he had a circle with the dunce symbol in there. I think that's how I ended it there. And he wore these little gloves, and I think I had the little lines on there, and these were hearts. I remember that. And his knees were kind of a little bony that popped out. And he kind of wore these goofy looking shoes, almost where I got the design of that from of his shoes from like Mighty Mouse. So they're whatever you would call Mighty Mouse shoes. And you know, he had big, you know, goofy feet as well. And his cape kind of just. And that's basically Stupid Man. And his buddy was which was Hero Man, is this guy here. And he had this big chest that came out. And there he is. Thumbs up to you. And he had a big H right here. And he probably would be up here showing his muscles, maybe holding a mirror or something, you know. So a little Vanity, like Vanity Smurf, if you remember him. You know, and that would be and this is what I would draw some stories about as Hero Man and Stupid Man. So here was always Mr. Shiny and Perfect, and this is the powerhouse. And I remember writing that he hated to become what was I going to say? He hated becoming because it was like he was a scientist. He didn't want to lose his stuff. They were like college roommates. That's, I think, their story. Thanks, Joe. I would we could talk maybe in the future about it. I don't know what I want to do with him right now. Like I said, I do plan to bring Plunger Pup back. I have been toying around with a short, maybe 12-page Ridiculous Heroes storyline. And this was coming from the time of what was that story? Like Ralph Bakshi's, not this time, but this is one of the influences of him. The Mighty Heroes, where there was, had like Rope Man and Diaper Man and Tornado Man and who else? There was Strong Guy. I think it was Strong Man. Sorry, Strong Guy is Marvel Comics. There was Strong Man, and there were this Cuckoo Man, which is one of my favorites. They were just goofy characters, and I've been toying around with this idea. So I don't know if I want to still use him. And if I choose not to, maybe we can have a little chat about him. But give me some time to think about what I wanna do with him. All right. I thank you though. I'm glad you guys stuck around. I'm glad you enjoyed this. Joe, I'm happy it gave you some help. Next week I'm gonna do humor writing for comics. I love, or what we would call gag writing. So how to write a joke. I love humor. I love writing jokes. I did want to show you this one thing before I forget. I mentioned the work I'm doing with Parody Press right now. Why isn't okay? There it is, and I'll just open this up here. This is the Mighty Boar instead of the Mighty Thor. I was on a stream last Sunday called Doodle and Chill. And I, it was all about parody. Don Chin, who is the creative mind behind Parody Press, who asked me to come on the stream and help promote. We were just drawing. These weren't characters that were in his book. It was just whatever, just draw whatever. So instead of the Mighty Thor, I came up with the Mighty Boar. Primarily, he's cooking vegan food, just so you guys know. Because if you know anything about boars, they're basically scavengers, but they do eat mostly plants, although they will eat meat if it's kind of on the ground there. So I just kind of made him a vegetarian. So this is a reward. So if you go to the X-Farce Parody Press Indiegogo page, for I don't remember the donation amount, but this is one of the rewards you can get as a downloadable file that you can print up at home. It is 11 by 17, drawn out by 10 by 15. And yeah, I mean, I'm sure there's a story in here, and I might have to draw a little parody for myself, maybe a 1 or 2 pager just for fun. But yeah, so I hope this helped out. Joe, definitely look up the Bakshi series. It is very humorous. You can watch a lot on YouTube. I think they're all on YouTube. You'll find people with it. It is silly. It's definitely 1960s feel to it. They're animated shorts. They're about, I think, 6 or 7 minute shorts, and I think they're some of the greatest stuff out there. There was another one that you might want to look up. If you give me 1 second, I'll look it up for you. I think it was called where is it here? Is it the Super? Let's see. Is it the Super 6 cartoon? No. What is that Oh, somehow it cartoon. Yeah, the Super 6 cartoon. Look that up. It might be, I don't know, a little boring of sorts for some people, but I feel it's just really funny. I'm not gonna, I'm looking up their names right now. I'm actually, what screen am I on here? I'm actually looking them up on the phone just so I can read their names. But there are some really, really funny stuff in here. But the if I'm saying it right, it's Super Boing He's like the main character they use in a lot of the cartoons. It is just funny, just a great thing. So anyway, guys, thanks for tuning in today. I will be on Tuesday night at 8:30 with Mark McKenna for my Get in Tune interviews. Mark, fantastic. He's worked. I'm sure you guys know his work if you haven't seen it, and he's got a great children's book called Banana Tales that's been out for a while that we'll chat about. And next week I'll come back, and if I can, maybe I'll have a guest on here. But we're going to talk about humor writing for comics. All right. So I'll see you guys next Saturday. Hopefully, I'll see you first on Tuesday. Joe, you're very welcome. Thanks for tuning in. You guys have a great rest of your weekend. Later.